Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people across the state of Mississippi who are working really, really hard in the trenches to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. I've got a great guest today. I want to start with just sharing this quote that I found on the power of positivity. It just popped up in my feed, but I thought it was terrific. It said, "Funny thing about getting older, your eyesight starts to get weaker, but your ability to see through people gets much better." I thought that was really good. And it actually is, it also applies well and is very true, I think, of an astute politician, one of which my next guest, Cindy Hyde-Smith, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, is. But it's true. I saw you kind of giggle a bit, but it is true. We, as we get older, we get a little wiser, don't we?
You know, I've said many times that about every 10 years, God gives us a new pair of glasses. And we see things much differently than we did 10 years previous to that. And as as we age, as we experience different things, we certainly see things differently. And I tell you, we're here in Washington, D.C. right now with eyes wide open.
I know they are, and I've been watching, as has I think so many Americans. I was having a conversation with Grant Callen about this, that there are people engaged in the political process today that would have never been engaged before. That it's a lot more transparent today. It may be because of the approach that Trump is taking and that you're taking and others are taking that are involved in the process. It could be social media, but people are engaged, and it's got to, I mean, I know it feels different because, President Trump is there and Republicans are in control and all of that, but it's more than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Going through the airport when traveling back and forth, there are so many people that come up to me, and they're very knowledgeable. In the grocery store, when I'm going through there shopping for my family, so many people come up and they just really surprise me of like, "Oh, well, I see where you got Kristi Noem confirmed today." People that I really wouldn't think that would be following that closely, but we definitely live in a fishbowl and everybody is watching, everybody is interested. But I really think that the reason they are is because of the last 4 years. People really just weren't that affected and they didn't pay that close attention. But when you fill up your car with gas, or when you fill up, especially like a log truck, an 18-wheeler, I assure you, they got engaged at that point. And going to the grocery store, just shopping, and a can of peach pie filling is $6. People get engaged when it affects their lives to that extent. And so many things, as you're well aware of the social issues, the American values that people felt were so compromised. That's when you're talking about my child in school and the things you're teaching. I assure you, they will get engaged, they will get informed, and it's very telling, very apparent that that's what they've been through.
As a former newspaper publisher and digital media CEO, I'm a student of the changing media landscape and what's happening. And I think a big contributor to what you're talking about is that for too long there were gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers leaned more liberal. If you look at CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and NBC and the likes of those. Some people would actually refer to those as mainstream media. I think actually the definition of mainstream media has changed, and I'll tell you what I think the new definition is, but I refer to them as more establishment. And they held back. If you think about, let's just take the border, for example. They were spinning one thing about the border over the past 4 years, and what we were beginning to understand based on our own observations was that it was completely different. And so I think what ended up happening is the average American said, wait a minute, have we been gaslit all these years by the establishment media? And now they're losing control of those narratives because mainstream media, which is the Joe Rogans of the world today and other podcasters like them and Fox News and others, are beginning to become actually the new mainstream. And we're beginning to understand there really are two sides to every story, whereas before we really didn't get to see that. And I think people were just sick and tired of getting gaslit. And there's redemption in what we're seeing now, isn't there?
There's no doubt. And with the social media, that's changed so many things. The podcast, as you mentioned, Joe Rogan and others with the podcast, is another avenue there. There's much more availability. I mean, you turn on the TV, you can get news 24 hours a day. And they are realizing that, hey, let's take a look at this. And it's great for people to have independent ideas. And it's great to listen to all of them. But now we can get many sides to the story, as you said, instead of just being told what a certain group wants us to hear.
Yeah, the gatekeepers were their agenda, and we saw that in great extent. You know, in my conversation with Governor Haley Barbour, he has often talked about being in the room with Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill at the same time. And you know the stories well. They certainly had different policy views. They didn't agree on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, they could come together and have a drink. We missed the days in America where we could have vigorous debate and still respect one another. And maybe we can get back there one day. But the reality is, we are headed in a different place now, and the average American is watching the process with a lot more awareness than they did before. You know, I have to be honest with you. And there was a time when I wasn't sure about Trump, and now I look at those. And by the way, you were never unsure about him, and I'll talk to you in a second about what is it that you saw these things that we're seeing now, and I think more Americans are seeing that now. But it's going to take a fundamentally different kind of leader that could push through all those layers that we're trying to keep him from becoming president to help create the kind of change that most Americans wanted to see. That's certainly evident from the election that we just had. You saw that, though. You never wavered. What is it that you saw? And you're not surprised to see today, but just that other Americans are beginning to join you in that awareness. What is it you saw?
Well, you've got to recognize the true talent and determination. I compare it a lot of times to an athlete that is so cocky, they're just so full of themselves, but by gosh, when they get up to that plate, they do what they need to do, and they hit the home run. Although, personally, you think tone it down a little bit, but when they perform, you know, it's just who they are. And he was the same way. Back in, I think it was 2015, Gary Bass, who is a mutual friend of mine and the president's in the agricultural world, is where Gary has always been active. And he called me and he said, Cindy, would you serve on Donald J. Trump's ag advisory team because he's running for president? And so I started doing a little research. And I realized, you know, he redefines mover and shaker. He really does. You know, we look at people that have accomplished great things and they may have been in one area, but I can't keep up with him. And I did the energy, the tenacity, my God, the determination that the man has. And so when I was exposed to that in 2015, and I followed him, of course, through the election, and when he became president, you know, I got a few roles in there, being on the being ag commissioner during some of that time. So I realized then, you know, when you've got somebody that can perform, let's get behind them because we have a whole lot of things that need changing. This last go round of the 4 years of the Biden administration, boy, did we need him more than ever to return. And, you know, I just think that if you could make a list on what it would take to totally destroy this country, I really believe that there was a puppet master somewhere that had that list. Let's open the border. Let's let everybody in that wants to come in. It doesn't matter. You know, let's just let everybody in. Let's create these cities that don't enforce the law. That, yeah, if you get, you know, your car gets broken into, sorry, you know, just you're going to hope you have insurance. Let's not enforce the law. Let's just demolish the energy that we're being able to produce. Let's do away with that. Let's close the Keystone Pipeline. Let's make sure we're dependent on foreign countries that hate us, that we have to buy fuel from. That's how you destroy a country. And they checked every box. Let's make sure that these kids know that if they're male, but they really want to be female, let's help them get there. That is the insanity that we've lived through for the past 4 years. And, I was only here a couple of years during the Trump administration. I came in 2018. Obviously, he got elected in 2016, but we were rocking and rolling. I mean, waters of the U.S., just one of the issues of agriculture that drove me insane as the ag commissioner. You had to pinch me to roll that back and say, we're no longer living under these ridiculous regulations. And there were so many things they were not just accomplishments, they were downright amazing that you think, how did we get this done?
Hey, Cindy, let's pick it up there on the other side. And when we come back from break, we're visiting with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and we're talking about this amazing situation that is unfolding before our very eyes in Washington, D.C. right now. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're visiting with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and I've been looking forward to this chat because she's at ground zero right now for major change happening in our country right now. And I'm delighted to have this. Hey, listen, we'll pick back up where we left off here in just a second. But what I'm curious about to kind of start this segment is, what does it feel like to be there? Do you actually pinch yourself sometimes to say, man, I'm literally in the middle of change that I believe is going to save our country? How do you personally feel about that?
I say all the time, it's just surreal. And it really is. There's moments that are just moments of magic. And to look at what I've been through for the majority of my tenure here, and to see the inauguration, to see the campaign. I mean, I was on the campaign trail. I went to every swing state. I covered this country. I was in Austin the day he did Joe Rogan. And listening to people talk about the border, they were scared for their families, the security issues there, the safe issues there, where the M13s that have come across that border. But to hear that throughout the country, I mean, from North Carolina to Montana, up to Michigan, up to Ohio, and then talking about the energy issues. I mean, it was just, it was everywhere. I am not surprised at all that we did not take every swing state and the majority of the popular vote. The inflation, it was what was on everybody's mind. And some of the things that would really strike chords was the American values. When I'm talking about, people, the parents do not want boys on the girls' basketball team. They certainly don't want them in the locker room. And campaigning in Montana with Tim Sheehy he was a great candidate. We beat an incumbent in Montana. We beat John Tester there. But we went throughout the state, and of course, I was better in the stockyards. That was my element. I could go in there. We had 700 people to show up on a Monday night in Billings, Montana at a stockyard. And I knew then we're going to win this thing. I told the president, we're going to win this thing and we're going to flip Montana. But to have that many people to come out, and with Tim getting off the bus, he would go to the microphone. And I just love this. He said, "My name is Tim Sheehy. I am a Navy SEAL, and those are my pronouns." And the crowds would just go absolutely wild over that. You could really get them revved up. In North Carolina, when we would be in a parking lot, and we would have over 1,000 people just looking out across a parking lot in some, medium-sized town in a small North Carolina. And the same thing we were hearing throughout the country of the same message. I campaigned in Ohio, and it was so much fun up there because, J.D. Vance is their hometown boy. He's their guy. And I was campaigning with Barry Marino, and going through all those towns and people walking up to me and saying, "I've never voted or I haven't voted in 4 or 5 elections, but I'm going to vote for JD." I thought, we can flip this seat. We can beat Sherrod Brown, who had been elected 50 years, because JD Vance was so popular at home with those who knew him the best. So just traveling out through rural America and going to the county fairs talking about the important issues there, it became evident. Now, I was nervous. I will tell you, till the last vote was counted, I was nervous. And staying up on election night to make sure that we had the win because of what we had gone through before, that we were so sure that we had it then. But I knew that I was going to work as hard as I could in every state that I could physically go to and put all the energy I had into that because there was so much at stake. I mean, there is no way we could lose this country. And I thought, we all need to leave it on the field. I can't talk for anybody else, but Cindy is going to get out there and she's going to go everywhere until there is not an ounce of energy left in my body to campaign.
You know, I'm listening to you, and gosh, there's so many directions I could go, but one that hits me. Here you are, Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce. You get appointed to the Senate. You have to go into this really small body, 100 men and women from around the country representing their states. So much to learn, so many relationships to develop. I mean, it had to feel really strange in the beginning. And then you develop, these relationships, but with Democrats and Republicans. I mean, I'm sure there's tremendous respect all around. I'm thinking about more recently your relationship with Marco Rubio, for example. Oh. But these relationships that develop, and then to travel the United States on this campaign and to be able to represent Mississippi, dispel myths about Mississippi, to be part of the process and do it so confidently and so passionately. It's amazing, really, how far you've come in a relatively short period of time, isn't it?
Well, God has a sense of humor. And I say all the time, I was airdropped into Washington, D.C. When the governor came to me, it's like, oh, gosh, do I really want to do this? And it's one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. And when I got here, and it was during Kavanaugh. So it was 2018 Farm Bill, which I loved, that I could walk in and we were working on the 2018 Farm Bill. But then Kavanaugh hit. And I was the first woman to go to the floor to defend that man. We had all these men saying this, and this. And I said, no, I'm going to defend him right now on the Senate floor. And the staff was saying, well, maybe we need to wait. I said, no, you're not going to stop me. I'm headed down there to do that. Just the strong convictions that I have when something needs to be done, that, God gives you that energy, stamina, tenacity to go do it. And of course, then we went through COVID and, unheard of shutting the country down. There's so many things that, and Marco and I are pretty close, but when we would go through these things, Marco would say, Cindy, this has never happened before. This isn't normal. And finally I said, Marco, when's it going to get normal? Because we had so many extremes. And I mean, I'm talking about extremes when you shut down the entire country because of COVID. And, being close to the president, people say, how did that happen? And I really can't explain that. He and I just have a bond, but I wish that the rest of the country could see the side that I get to see a lot of times. Like he called me one morning at 5 a.m., and it was his mother's birthday. He was almost weepy-eyed talking about his mother. And I'm thinking, no one would ever believe this is Donald J. Trump on the phone with me. But, I say I'm everybody's mother. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to be that sounding board for him. And, there's a lot of things, agricultural, other things that is not his comfort zone. But it's really surreal to me that he will reach out and say, Cindy, what do you think? My husband and I will be down there in a couple of weeks. We'll have the opportunity to have dinner with he and Melania. But I said all the time, I think he just likes rednecks, and he's never been around any. It's a new exposure to him. And, we're in the cattle business, we're ranchers, and that's a pretty rough and tumble business at times. And I say, you were a developer in New York. That's pretty rough and tumble as well. And he was criticized at one time because of having all of his relatives in the White House. And I said, Mr. President, I said, if we have to go repossess cattle, you know who I take with me? I take a blood relative. And those are the things, the moments that we kind of bond together on. But for some reason, when he trusts you, he trusts you. And there would be nobody on that cabinet that he doesn't know personally and has 100% confidence in. So he's extremely loyal, but it's a pretty small circle. We were talking, we have a Bible study on Tuesday morning, and this morning our Bible study was on humility. And of course, President Trump came up, and I thought, oh, yeah, we're talking about humility, something that he doesn't have a lot of. But it just gives you such perspective on sitting in this seat as the U.S. Senator from Mississippi, looking at the tremendous responsibility that is. You have to love your state. You have to love this country, because it's a tall drink of water, Ricky. I mean, it really is. It's a tall drink of water. But I love the opportunity where truly God has placed me, that I can do some things and I can truly help people that need help. Whether it's that simple call of something, I'll cry if I tell you, my child needs a new wheelchair at school because the one that we had assistance buying, it doesn't work that well anymore, and I'm pushing him through gravel to get him into the schoolhouse. Can you help me? That call is just as important as one from Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it truly is. And you have to look at it with the attitude of, why am I here? And we've got a short runway. I mean, the next 4 years will pass so quickly. And we have so much to get done with these confirmations, which I'm thrilled. We've got 5. And after this interview's over, we'll get Sean Duffy in there. We'll have 6 confirmations.
When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Hey, listen, just a quick note. We're recording this on Tuesday because that's when we could get our calendars together. It's going to be playing on Thursday in the expanded version of this show. But appreciate you joining us. I hope you're enjoying kind of a deep dive into Cindy Hyde-Smith's world these days. Hey, Cindy, I mentioned during the break, I want to share a quick story with you. Many years ago, Donald Trump was talking about doing a casino at the Marine Life in Gulfport. And at the time, I was involved heavily in the Gulfport Chamber and was part of passing a resolution to support that project. And not long after that, there was a public meeting at the Broadwater, and folks asked me to go speak to the issue about our specific issue and the resolution that we had passed. And I had another meeting to go to, so I was literally able to go there. I did the public support really quickly, and then I had to leave the room, and it was packed. The whole auditorium at Broadwater was packed. So I got there, I said my piece, and as I'm walking out, I'm literally didn't go back and sit down. I'm walking out, headed to another meeting. I feel someone behind me, and it was in the middle of this public meeting. He sort of chases me down, and he grabs my shoulder. I turn around, and it's Donald Trump, and shakes my hand, and he said, "I just want to thank you. I appreciate you coming here. It means a lot to me that you came here and said what you had to say. So I'm sorry you had to leave, but I just wanted to make sure you know how much I appreciate what you did." So I left, and I thought, wow, that was interesting. I mean, whether he did or he didn't, he made me feel like in that moment I was the most important person in the room. For what it's worth. Okay, fast forward about a month, and I'm actually not at the office, and I get a note from my assistant who says, Donald Trump just called you. Can you call him right now? I said, yeah, sure. Like, Donald Trump's called me. So I called him, and he said, Ricky, I've been looking for your call. And he wanted to let me know another decision was about to get made around Marine Life. And he wanted me to understand his passion. And he said that dolphins were really important to his mother. His mother loves dolphins. And he went into this great detail about his passion for this project and why it means so much to him, and it was connected to his mother. And he just wanted to call and tell me that. That's it. I just thought that was so interesting. But if he did that on every project, if he did that on every issue, and he apparently does, it's hard to say no to him. I mean, that's what you experienced, isn't it?
No doubt it's hard to say no to him. I can be painfully honest with him. And Lindsey Graham gets tickled. He said she will jerk a knot in him. So, and for some reason, he doesn't get mad at me. And I get sent to Mar-a-Lago a lot to try to settle things and straighten things out. But, I just think just being honest, upfront, straightforward with him is the way to handle him. And I have told him no before. But, he always says, Cindy, I totally understand. And, he likes protecting the friendship. And I certainly like protecting that. But he has a very soft spot for his heart, for his mother. But now he loves the Gulf Coast. He tells me about coming to the Gulf Coast, about meeting Moby Solange. He tells me those things. And I've actually brought Ivanka down to Lynn Meadows before. Yeah. And, of course, anybody on my staff can tell you she loves the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I did live down there briefly for a while, but working on that blue economy, as we all call it, it's so much federal activity down there with Keesler Air Force Base, as we know, with the defense building, shipbuilding, and all those side businesses that support that industry. It's not hard to get me down there at all. But there's so much, it's a lot of important work to be done. And my job is to make sure that that blue economy keeps growing. Shipbuilding is national defense. It is so important. And it's very indicative in the appropriation bill that I know how serious that is. And I'm ready to get the appropriations bill passed. There's so much in it for the Gulf Coast, with the marine, the harbors, the dredging of Pascagoula, the dredging of the Gulfport Harbor that I've been to many times, and of course with shipbuilding, that everybody's going to be really pleased. I think that my team, my staff, it certainly just isn't me, but those that are working on the defense spending, we've done well there. I have a great respect for Susan Collins from Maine, who's chairman. They do shipbuilding as well in Maine. So we have that in common. She understands it when I come with these asks and how critical that it is for our economy, for the industry down there, for jobs that are just generational. And, I call it athleticism, that they can work in that heat. Now it is so much better than when I first started going back in 1999, when I was running for the state senate or was elected to the state senate. It's come so far, but I'm so proud of those jobs. And industrial athleticism is a real thing, that in the summertime in Pascagoula, Mississippi, when you're out there, whether at VT, Halter Marine, wherever, with those jobs, they're not easy jobs, but there's a lot of pride taken in that.
Well, Cindy, when you look at the Mississippi Gulf Coast, some of our best days may still be ahead. I mean, you think about what gaming has done, you think about what shipbuilding has done, you think about the blue chip industries that are part of Stennis and the emergence of the blue economy. Joe Max Higgins said on my show that coast of Mississippi, if you were to take the 3 coast counties and then the next coast county, so all six coastal counties, and bring them together in some economic development push, that we're the 800-pound gorilla that would be really hard to beat. And I think that what we're thinking about as we go forward is how do we continue to diversify our economy beyond gaming and shipbuilding. I know there are other aspects to it, but there's some real opportunities for us. We've got land, we've got quality of life, we've got a standard of living that's extraordinarily competitive. And, of course, we've got a coast, and we've got a port. And when you start to add, we've got numerous ports, I might add, but you start to add all those pieces together, and coast of Mississippi has a lot going for it, that in the years to come, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of us.
Oh, we're definitely on the bubble. When I had the opportunity to ride down Highway 90 in the Beast with President Trump as we were headed to the rally that we had in Biloxi the night before the election, I was looking at DeBees Road. I was looking at Courthouse. I was looking at all the streets, and I would say, Mr. President, you see that lot right there? I would say it's like 70 feet wide, it's 50 feet deep, and you can get it for this amount. And we'd get to another one. I said, you see that? That's for sale right there. He could not believe the prices. And finally, he looked at me and he said, how do you know all of this? I said, because I look at real estate just about every night on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I said, it is such a bargain to live here. There's so much potential, but so much of it is about the leadership on the coast, too.
Yes.
We've had some great leaders down there. It didn't just happen. But it definitely has my heart, and I don't just say that because I'm talking to Ricky Matthews. Anybody that's known me my entire life, they know that she loves that Mississippi Gulf Coast, and she wants a retirement place down there one day. Of course, I have an office down there. Murtis Frank is a force to be reckoned with. Just get out of her way. We're there in the Federal Building beside the aquarium. But there are so many opportunities, just as Stennis Space Center, as you mentioned. And, I would love to have NASCAR racing on the Gulf Coast. There's so many ideas out there that could really be formidable and could really actually happen. But working with the leaders down there, we can certainly enhance and capitalize on something that is already absolutely great.
I can't agree more. You think about it. I mean, our state's such a diverse state, and this show's going into the Mississippi Delta. Obviously, it's going to Jackson as well. You think about the opportunity. And I love that you never forgot your agricultural roots, and the challenges that farmers are going through these days. What do you hope will evolve as we go forward in terms of because agriculture is impacted by global conditions. You know that better than most. Within the Trump administration, where do you think Mississippi farmers are going to fit into that?
Well, I live in the real world, and we're the ones that feed you. And you talk about national security, food security is national security. I love the opportunity that, first of all, that the president does bring me to the table, but he understands global markets. With the input cost of just fuel alone, equipment, hay rakes that we bought 5 years ago that have doubled in the price. That is unreal with the interest rates. Farming has become very, very difficult. And the regulations that came with the Biden administration, buddy, that just added to it. So in the continuing resolution that we passed before Christmas in the funding, the supplemental funding, we put money in there, actually, and it started in Jackson, Mississippi. We had a meeting with farmers that came in and lenders. And when I have lenders that come in and say, we cannot finance these farmers next year, you've got my attention. There's $10 billion that was passed in that bill, that it was a struggle. But you talk about running my feet off from the House side, Senate side to the House side and back and meeting with people and then being told, well, we tried to do it. I said, no, this story isn't going to end this way. We're getting it in there.
Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, when we get back on the other side for the final segment, we'll pick it up from right there about the farmers and the challenges that they're facing, and you can finish that point about why what you just talked about was so important to them. We'll continue after this break. See you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. We're visiting with Cindy Hyde-Smith, and this has been such an incredible conversation. She's got to go do a vote, so we're going to finish the thought about farmers, and then we're going to let her slip out, and then we'll kind of wind it all down. But that bill was really important to Mississippi farmers. They're seeing great yield. They had a great year. Finally had some rain in strategic times during the calendar year, and the crops were strong, but the prices are down, and it's just a struggle, isn't it?
Well, with the input cost, that's what really threw us into a spin, that it was just so much more expensive to harvest, to get in the ground. And it is critically important that happens. But I'm really excited about Brooke Rollins, who is going in as the Ag Secretary. And she and I, we were texting last night. She understands that. But even when we pass these great programs that can benefit the farmers, you got to get them out the door. You got to get them through the USDA offices. You got to get them that the applications are simple enough that people can come in, but you got to get the programs implemented. And when people weren't coming to work in the last administration, permitting and things that should take 6 weeks were taking 2 years, Ricky. So I'm really excited that we have cabinet members in place, that when we do pass these things, we can actually implement them. And I think Brooke Rollins is going to be very valuable there.
That is exciting. Listen, the final thoughts before you run off and do this vote.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I love being able to stop and take time and give people an update of what's actually happening, especially with the excitement. People are so eager. It's like they cling on every syllable when I talk about being there in front of the former presidents when they were swearing in President Trump for the second time, and the uniqueness of that. And truly, it was magical. But thank you for this opportunity, and I'm going to run go vote.
God bless you, and continue to work hard. We'll stay in tune for sure.
Thank you.
This has been Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. It's been a terrific conversation. You know, I had this discussion with Grant Callen yesterday about media and the changing media landscape and how the gatekeepers have kind of lost control. And it was interesting to hear her at the beginning of the conversation talk a little bit about that too. It is a new world that we're in, and the thing that impressed me about this conversation, whether you're a Republican or not, what impressed me about this conversation was the fact that, you know, when you think about her being the Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce in Mississippi, getting this appointment to the Senate, and how she had to come up to speed so rapidly. She said obviously she wasn't there when President Trump first started serving in 2016 or 2017, but in 2018 when she got there was a lot to focus on, Brett Kavanaugh among them, but she was really focused on the agriculture piece as well. But then think about where she is today and the relationships she's garnered during that time, the issues that she's on top of, and she really believes it to the depth of her soul that if we weren't working on the issues that she's working on now under President Trump, that we would lose our country. She really believes that, and you can hear it in her voice and see it. And, just to the extent that her relationship with Donald Trump, this close relationship they have, accrues to Mississippi in a positive way going forward, that can only be good for us. I don't care which side of the fence you're on. It can only be good for us. We want these kind of relationships to exist. And with Roger Wicker as the chairman of his important committees, that's going to have such an important role as it relates to Ingalls shipbuilding and beyond. We're in a really, really good spot today as far as our Senate leadership, and I hope you agree with that. I want to just, before we get off the show, I want to just remind you, if you missed my conversation with Grant Callen yesterday, we talked a lot about the changing media landscape, but we talked about school choice and the amount of energy that's getting behind that now. We may be moving in a direction as it relates to school choice that could be very transformative for Mississippi. And several southern states are ahead of us, Florida among them, Florida being the one that's further along than the other states. And the sky hasn't fallen, and education is going to improve. And you can tell from the conversation with Grant that we're getting aligned around that. And I think we're going to be moving in a direction as it relates to improving Mississippi's educational opportunities through school choice in ways that we didn't maybe think was possible a couple of years ago. And it's good to see state leadership beginning to get behind that. That is for sure. Let's see. What else do we have? I tell you, the feedback that we've gotten from the tribute shows that we did around the unfortunate and untimely death of Paul Gallo from the Gallo Show. I had the opportunity to spend some time with J.T. Mitchell, the news director for SuperTalk Mississippi News, and then with Richard Cross, who's been sitting in for Gallo for more than 4 months. In some respects, the celebration of his legacy, honoring Paul Gallo, was somewhat missed because it happened during the snow and the inauguration and all of that. But if you're just now getting the news that our friend Paul Gallo has passed, I would really encourage you to go to SuperTalk Mississippi, SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast, or to the Ricky Matthews Show and watch the shows that I had with the most recent shows I had with J.T. Mitchell and Richard Cross. I think you'll be glad you did. A lot of tribute shows at the SuperTalk Mississippi site as well. Well, anyway, that concludes today's show. I hope you enjoyed it as I did. It's good to see Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith in the bowels of all this change and with all the energy and passion that she's bringing to the table. It can only be good for Mississippi in the long run. God bless you and have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.